In this video we are going to see how we can use the input task in workflows. Input task is usually used in business processes where you want to perform some input action based on the form submission. We are going to use the example of an expense form in which once the user fills the form, a request is sent to the manager for approval of the expenses, and then based on the approval we can perform subsequent actions. As you can see, this form has fields to capture the name, expense amount and expense details. So once the form is submitted, we want to send these details to the manager, and based on the details the manager can approve or reject the expense request. For this we first need to create an approval input form that the manager can use to approve the expenses request. We need to add 2 text controls and a 2 numeric control. We also need a submit button to submit this form. Next we need to change the labels of each of these controls. Now in order to assign the values to these controls we will have to add query string parameters that are available in the configuration settings. Query string parameters are optional for input task and can be used if you want to show that in input form or you want to perform on-screen rule and validation based on the input values. Since I want to show it in on-screen form, we will add query parameters, otherwise approved amount control should have been enough. Here I will add the query strings. The first one that we need is expense by, and we need to enter a test value that will be used for the preview purpose. Next we will create a query string for expense details and enter a test value for this. And finally we will create a query string for the expense amount and again enter a test value. These keywords will be required to be filled in the query string functions so that we will be able to submit these values. Next we will add a function here to use the query string we just created. You can see that on validation it shows me the value jack which we had entered as our test value. This will be replaced once we bind the actual data. In the same way we need to add the functions for the other 2 fields too. Since the manager is only going to view the data in these 3 fields, we will make them read-only. Next we will go back to our add expense form, and once this form is submitted, we will add an input task to the existing workflow. I will add an input task at the start of this workflow. We will give this task a name. Here you can see this task is available only in the prod environment, so the application needs to be published to see this in action. Now here we need to select the screen which is my expense approval screen. Next here we will select the submit button that we have on that screen. These are the properties that we had added in our query string configuration. We need to bind these to the appropriate controls from the add expense screen. When I click on this set permission to display option, we can see the values that will be seen by the person to whom the task has been assigned, and can hide one or fields and those won't be shown to that person. Let me hide the expense details field for now. We will see this in detail at a later stage in the video. Next we need to select the user to which this task needs to be assigned. For the sake of simplicity, I will assign this task to the initiator itself. You have some additional properties that you can configure. You can configure it if you want a deadline for the task. This will also be highlighted in Workflow Analytics once the deadline is passed and the input task is still not submitted by the manager. You can also select if you want the ability for the task to be reassigned to another user, or if you want to send a mail for the task assignment. Here you even have an option to customize the notification that will be sent, where you can set the title and description. Now we can click on Done and the input task is configured. Now once this input task is configured, the values of the input task can be made available for other tasks to consume. For example, let me open this Slack message task. Now we can configure it so that once the manager submits the input form, we can receive a message which shows the approval message. In this message we can show the approved amount as well as subtract that approved amount, form the expense amount and show the rejected amount. Next we will just finish this Slack task configuration. So this is how we are able to use the data from our input form in another task. Now we will have to publish this application to see our tasks in action. Now we can view the published micro app in the container app on any platform. Here I have the web version of the container app and search for the application that we just made. On long pressing this icon we can see the release notes as input task added and the current version. Now I will add a new expense here to see my task being triggered. And I will submit this form. So this is my mobile and here you can see I have received a notification for the task. This notification can be customized as per the need. I can open it now in the mobile app, or we can even refresh the web container app to see the notification in this sidebar. Now we can open this and as you can see a new task has been assigned to me. I can even see the same thing on the mobile app. Here it will directly open the task. When I click on this open task option, it will take me to the expense approval form that we had created. Here you can see all the details from the expense form have been automatically filled using the query string that we had used. I can now enter the amount that I want to approve. Here on the right side we have this button that can be used to see the details of the task. Since we had hidden the expense details in our configuration, we can only see the name and the expense amount here, and expense detail is not visible. Now I will submit this. And if you remember, we had also configured a Slack message based on this approval. So now let me go to the Slack application. You can see here we have a message that says approved amount is 400 and the rejected amount is 100. So this is how we can configure and use an input task in our business applications. Thank you for watching the video. For more videos visit our YouTube page.